Well, hello, slingers. Welcome to another Wordslinger podcast. I'm glad you're here. I got some updates for you, a couple of things to run by you, and I think you're not going to want to miss it, so stick around.
It's the Wordslinger podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger.
Wordslinger.
Well, I am Kevin Tumlinson, the Wordslinger. Welcome to another week of Wordslinger Wonder. Wow. So this week, first I want to talk about something because I had friends at Pro Writing Aid reach out to tell me that they are one of the sponsors of this brand new thing, and it is a replacement for National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo. And if you haven't heard, that shut down for reasons. There's a lot of things that had happened, but and we covered that in the news on the Writers Inc. podcast a while back. So if you are tuning into us there, then you already know that story. But what's happening now is Novel November. And they're kind of stepping in to kind of fill the gap, fill the void of NaNoWriMo. And it's effectively the same rules. You will write a novel of 50,000 words-ish minimum in 30 days. And, no pre-planning, no outlining ahead of time. That's cheating. And you might stand a chance at winning some rewards. You can actually get advice from some best-selling authors at 150 sessions and a lot more. So one novel, 30 days, 50,000 words. That's Novel November. And I've got a link for you, and you'll find this in the show notes. But if you'll go to bit.ly/NovNov25, that will let you register for Novel November. That's bit.ly/NovNov25. So find that in the show notes. And that is, I'm going to probably promote that another couple of times going forward. On the sort of downsizing minimalist front, Kara and I were having a garage sale this weekend, and that's going to be the first of several. We are making some progress. I mean, if you're watching me on YouTube, nothing has really changed all that much in the office behind me here. This will probably be the last thing to go. I'm thinking I'm going to probably not get around to emptying this place out too quickly. Because, I got to keep up appearances. You got to be pretty in order to get ahead in this world. But man, this process has been kind of cathartic and kind of jarring at the same time. I am going through. I'm kind of forcing myself to be brutal about some things. One thing I'm about to do, and this is interesting, is I've made a list of clothing I'm going to buy. And once I buy that clothing, I'm going to literally just grab all the rest of the clothes in my closet, not hesitate, just shove them in a couple of garbage bags and take them and donate them. And I'm not going to bother to try to sell them, because if they're sitting around waiting to be sold, I'm going to go back through them and want to keep this t-shirt or that hat or that pair of pants or something. But I've needed some updated clothes for a while now. I'm gonna do the whole adopt a wardrobe idea. A lot of minimalists do this, and it appeals to me. And you've got guys like Steve Jobs did things like this, where he had all those turtlenecks, and he wore like a black turtleneck and jeans and sneakers, and that's all he ever wore. And it's to help eliminate decision fatigue. I may go with more colors than just black or something, but I think that idea is the right idea. And then Karen and I were talking about it and realized, so when I need something, if there's going to be a special event, why buy it ahead of time? I mean, risk it being out of date, or getting stained or torn or eaten by moths, or if we're in the van, all kinds of things could happen to it. So I will just commit to I'm going to buy things as I need them, And if it doesn't look like I'm going to wear it more than a couple of times, I can go ahead and sell or donate it. And so maybe that sounds wasteful to some people. I actually think it's a brilliant way to handle pretty much everything about your life. I'm looking at doing the same sorts of things with equipment. I've got my kit down here now, so I've got this studio mic. I've been using my iPhone as the camera for what I do. I have a Mac Mini, like an M4 Mac Mini that I got a few months ago that I've been doing the podcast stuff on. I'm going to sell my laptops because I still have several, and all my other computers. I got 2 other Mac Minis that I'm going to sell, and some iPads and things. And I'm going to sell and trade and do all the things. And I'm thinking I'm going to upgrade to an M4 iPad. And that will mean that for the first time since, I'm going to say 2003, maybe, actually, no. The first time since about 1998 or 9. Let me do the math here. Okay, let me go back further. The first time since about 1996, now that I think about it, it will be the first time that I have not owned a laptop. Think about that for a minute. That is remarkable. But the new iPads, the M4 iPad Pro, can do practically everything I want to do. Now, some of it is a little funky, but because I can run Photoshop on the iPad, but it's missing a few key features that I use pretty frequently. So it's a little bit of a frustrating experience because it looks the same, but when I try to do something, or open a file that I work with a lot, like one of my cover designs, certain features aren't there, and that's frustrating. On the other hand, if I'm using something like Final Cut Pro to do video editing, which is what I use for this show, I can actually use Final Cut on the iPad Pro, and the interface is kind of cool. I mean, it looks the same, but it works faster. I've seen it played around with anyway. So a lot of what I do, anything I need a mobile machine for, I could do on the iPad. And then the rest of it I could do on the Mac Mini. And there's certain things that aren't going to translate well. Microsoft Office has some limitations I've heard. I hate having to use Office anyway. I don't use Excel. I use Google Sheets for anything spreadsheet related. And I do use Microsoft Word because that's just the de facto standard of every industry. Everybody, I can't escape it. I can't escape Microsoft as much as I've tried over the years. But what this is forcing me to do is kind of look at like what's my workflow and how much do I need in order to do that. I do my daily journaling. I have several different journals that I keep throughout a week, and I'm going to probably continue to do that stuff, because it's become a ritual and a habit. It's a good one for me. And each journal that I have serves a different purpose for me. And then one of them is just like planning. I mean, I'm holding up one now. I've got several, and I like these little leather sleeves, but these are Moleskine notebooks. This one has my logo sticker on it. This is my everyday, I can damage the crap out of it, stain it, tear it, whatever I want version of a journal. This one I use a lot for like just quick ideas and planning, and I'm starting to I'm going to reorient to where I'm writing across, like I open it up and turn it sideways and write across so I get more of a page. It's funny. Anyway, stuff like that. I'm refining how I do this stuff and what things I'll carry with me. I've always been obsessed with like the ultimate portable productivity package. For years, I've tried to get things down to where I only worked on an iPad, or for a long time, I was only doing things on my iPhone. And you can totally do that. I've written entire novels on my iPhone with both a keyboard and occasionally with nothing but my thumbs. If you have ever signed up for my mailing list, the novella that you can get for free is called The Janai Sigil, and I wrote that entire story, at least the first draft of it, while standing in line for Flight of the Passage. It's an Avatar ride at Disney's Animal Kingdom, and it was a 3.5 hour wait to get on the ride, and I was there by myself, and so I wrote a short story while standing in line because I was surrounded by German people. Nobody spoke English, and I don't have anything else to do. I was tired of social media. I was tired. I didn't feel like reading anything. I felt creative, and so I used my thumbs and I wrote a story that ended up becoming the free story that I offer to people when they sign up to my newsletter. So I've been obsessed with, like, the iPhone is one device to rule them all. When we were on the road full time in the van, I wrote exclusively on the iPad. Did podcasting on the iPad. I was looking for ways to make the iPad a laptop replacement. And now with the advent of the M4 series chips on iPad and iOS 26, which makes it a much more laptop-like workflow and environment, I'm pretty much there. I think there's really very few things that I'd have to actually use the Mac Mini for, and I would largely use it for video editing stuff. But if I can replicate that on the iPad, maybe that too would be a thing of the past. So things like that fascinate me. I love being mobile. We had bought a Starlink for the van before we realized that when we do the van life thing, we're not going to be doing it the same way we did the first time. So when we were in the first time, it was home all the time because it was during the pandemic years. Sometimes it was hard to find a place to stay. We were very mobile all the time, so it was just easier for us to just be in the van all the time. And it worked out great. We had processes. We had everything set up. It was very comfortable. I read a journal entry today from 2020. This day, 2020. We were in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I was writing about how cozy and warm we were in the van in 27 degree weather. And getting colder. And I remember it got very cold, below zero, before we left there. But I was just marveling that we had a warm place to sleep. We had TV, we had internet, we had food and water and toilet and all the things we needed in this tiny little space. We did not have to leave that. We got snowed in that van when we were in Garden of the Gods for 3 days. And we were perfectly comfortable and perfectly fine. I would take the dog out into the snow to do her business, and that was really the only time I really had to go outside. I did have an incident with the van at one point, which I'll happily talk about some other time. And I'll give you a heads up before I do so that you are not eating or drinking anything while I am telling the story. So make of that what you will. But anyway, I have always been obsessed with being very portable, and so this movement towards a minimalist lifestyle has been very beneficial for me. I'm doing a lot of things right now with various businesses in the indie publishing world. Pro Writing Aid is kind of one of them, but I've done some things for Publisher Rocket, for Plotter, and a couple others, and I'm starting to develop something, and I've talked about this in the past, I think, but there's a concept for something that I came up with forever ago that I've called Throughline. When I was briefly the CEO of Book Sweeps, I came up with this idea of something that would help connect all the various pieces of the industry in a cooperative. Well, it turns out that that's something that's very much in demand, so I'm going to continue tinkering with that. I've got a business plan around it. I've got some tentative partnerships already lined up, and then so I'm working on that. And then I've also come up with a concept for what I'm calling the Novelton Bookshop that I think indie authors are really going to like. And I'm not going to give you any details now because some of the details on these things keep changing from week to week as I get a different idea or I learn something new. But I guess the point I'm going to make here is that I'm in a sort of planning stage and I'm writing a couple of business plans, and I can see that these two ideas connect, and I wasn't expecting that. But after a conversation I had with Cameron from Plotter yesterday, I realized, okay, this through line thing really is something that is needed and something that I'm uniquely in a position to bring into existence. So I'm going to do that. Now, here's the balance for me, and maybe this is the challenge for you when it comes to work life versus your creative workflow. The one thing I am committed to is I must continue writing, and if I don't, I lose myself. I lose the thread of who I am. So finding the balance between all the things that must be done and all the things you want to do, and this work that we've taken on, that can be very challenging. And I'm still learning ways and methods and tricks for dealing with this. But these past 2 or 3 weeks, well, really, since just prior to leaving for NINC, we started kind of tinkering with the idea of downsizing. And so when I came home from NINC, Kara had already removed a lot of things, and it threw me off emotionally because I was coming home after a long week of being gone. All I wanted was to be home, and I get home and some of my home is gone. But it's kind of kicked me in the butt and got me moving. But the thing is, for the past 2 or 3 weeks, my life has been more or less consumed by preparing for all this stuff. We got the garage sale coming up. We've got other things that we're doing. We're selling furniture. I've sold a ton of furniture and other items over Facebook Marketplace. And so all this stuff takes a lot of time. And so then the thing that ends up falling aside is the writing. I can't allow that to happen. So I've had to adapt my strategy a little. I still must do the writing, just not doing it quite the way I normally would. Now, you've heard me talk in the past about, I've done a little bit of dictation, that sort of thing. That's not what I'm doing right now. That's not the solution, I've decided. At least it doesn't feel like the solution. But what I am doing is, let's say I'm working in the garage and I'm getting the garage set up for a garage sale. I'm culling through boxes of things, or I'm culling through a closet. I am kind of keeping a running conversation with myself about the story that I'm working on, and I'm in a way I'm outlining, because what I've discovered about myself is and maybe this is why I was a good pantser, but I can keep the thread of a story alive in my head, even if I go months between reading a book or writing a book. I don't normally go months or even weeks. In fact, I don't even go days. I mean, I do go days. I'll sometimes go days, depending on how busy things are, but I don't go more than a week between writing sessions. But I'm really good at just picking up the thread where I left it and running with the story and expanding on it. Or if I'm reading a book, I can go months without picking that book up again. And when I do, I slot right back in and can read it. You probably have a similar skill. So what I do is keep telling myself bits of the story, clicking things together, and eventually the stuff that doesn't make sense ends up falling away. And all that's left is sort of the core, the essence of the story. And that's the thing that gets written down. I actually think that's a really good process. So I'm putting in the same sort of level of thought as I would if I sat down and wrote an outline. I'm not losing momentum the way I always worry about with outlines. I always worry that, and I've noticed that if I do an outline, sometimes I lose interest in the story. This instead is kind of like, you've come up with something and you can't wait to tell your wife or your husband or your friend about it. So for me, it's the reader. I can't wait to tell the reader this story and craft it. And so I'm coming to the page with the idea already shaped, and all I'm doing is putting the words to it and then finessing those words. But doing that while I do other things, the distraction of mundane work or whatever, physical labor, and then there's that idea of when you're in the shower or whatever. But like, I take a daily walk. I work on the garage. I have my morning stuff, my journals and things like that. All this stuff is starting to kind of flow together and allow me to shape the story before it's written down. So, and then what I did was I created now I'm using an iPhone, and there's the Notes app. I'm absolutely positive that there's something like this on Google phones or other phones, but I have what I call it a quick note. So each thing I'm working on, I have a little folder on Apple Notes called Priority, and that's got the podcasts in it. Things related to the podcast go in those folders. Each book in progress has a folder, and each business idea that I'm tinkering with has a folder. And within each of those is what I call it a quick note, and it is literally, it's actually in Notes you can do a checklist bullet where you can actually check that, and it'll put a line through that item. And it's for making like grocery lists or to-do lists, task lists, things like that. I use that because I throw these ideas in there, and if I comb back through there and I see an idea and I've got a better idea now, then I can check that, and I'll still have the idea there to reference if I want to tinker with it. But otherwise, it's not active. Or if I implement something, I can check it. And so as I'm thinking about, let's just say the business plans, I throw an idea in there. I listen to a lot of podcasts about, opening bookstores, what works, what doesn't, what's failed, what's succeeded, how to do better with Substack, formatting Substack better, that sort of thing. So I'll throw these ideas in those quick notes, and I'm doing the same thing with this novel. So in a sense, what I'm doing is outlining, but not specifically sitting down to outline. I'm coming up with ideas, and if I have one that I think that is it, that's the one, I open my phone, I open the quick note for that book, I drop the idea in with a little checkbox next to it, so that later when I put it into the book, I can check it and it's done. Or if I decide it doesn't work for me after all, I check it and it's scratched through, and then I have it to reference if I decide I'm going to use it again later. So in a sense, I'm creating the outline. I'm just sort of doing it in, clumped ideas. What if I were to sit down with that and then reorganize it, put it in order? It would be the outline. So there you go. If you struggle with outlines, that's a method. If you struggle with trying to find the time to write, this is a method for continuing to be productive, even if you haven't actually gotten to sit down and do the actual writing. Because you could write a quick scene, some dialogue, something like that, as one of those little check boxes in a quick note for something to place within the book later. So you can actually do some writing this way. And I have used dictation. It's just not quite, I don't think it's not the answer for me on this stuff, But if I did have an idea, maybe that would be something I could dictate and quickly grab it and then move that into the quick note. So, there's ways to do this. And I'm exploring all that. So I guess what I'm doing this with the stuff I own, the home I live in, the clothes I wear, the food I eat, the way I handle budgets and accounting, all of it. I'm doing all this, and it's a pause and reflect, look at what my process and workflow is, and refine it and make it better. I'm becoming more intentional in the way I relate to money, as an example. So I've been terrible about bookkeeping over the years. For some reason, QuickBooks intimidates me. So I'm going to deep dive and learn all I can about QuickBooks. But in the meantime, I need to be better and more diligent about keeping track of where my money is being spent. And so I built a spreadsheet in Google Sheets that allows me to create a profit and loss statement, imported all the transactions from my account for the full year, and went through over a day or so, and I created categories based on the IRS categories that I need, and I made sure to categorize each item. And so now I can actually generate, I have formulas set up to generate a P&L for me, so I can see how I'm doing financially, and for the year at least. And then I can run a report and create a graph so I get a visual of where my money's going. And there's a saying, and I mess it up every time. It's what gets measured gets managed. I've been a little lax about managing the money. I'm starting to set aside more for investment. One of the decisions we made when it comes to home ownership. So I'm shifting the way I think about money and to being more asset focused. So if I spend money, it needs to be intentional, and it needs to produce an asset. It needs to pay me back in some way. It needs to earn for me. So if I buy a piece of property, that property needs to earn me money and not take money from me only. So in that sense, right now, it's crazy for us to own a piece of property, because there's the mortgage, HOA fees, homeowners insurance, the property taxes, the maintenance and upkeep costs, and a million other little things. And it's just a money pit, right? If I could buy the house outright, it mitigates a lot of that. But I've decided that it's smarter for us to rent a place. Once we come off the road, once we stop doing the van life thing, we'll rent a place, because what we're paying for isn't the ownership of the property, but the resource, the experience. We're thinking of renting a place in the Domain in Austin, which means I'd be walking distance from all these things I love, restaurants, and shopping, and coffee shops, and Whole Foods, iPic Theater, all the things I've always wanted to be able to experience without having to drive 30 or 40 minutes to get to it. I could walk 4 or 5 minutes from my door. So I'm paying less than half of the mortgage we pay on this house for a space that allows me to have those opportunities and options. That's an asset then, even though I won't own the property when it's done. And a lot of people will see that and say, you're throwing money away on rent. And I can see the argument for that. I believed that for a long time, but for me and for Kara, the decision has been that if we rent a place to live, we can then invest our money more wisely so that it brings us more money, because my investments are practically nothing now. I mean, everything went into this house. This house was very expensive. So if we sell the house, particularly at a profit, it ends up benefiting us. So it becomes an asset, but there's too big of a gap between purchase and sale to make it a useful asset. On the other hand, if I buy some income properties and they start paying me and I make a profit off of those, the goal would be that pays for where I live. So we could purchase a home at that point, as long as we have some investment that is covering the cost of the home, the insurance, the HOA fees, the maintenance, all the overhead of owning a home. My goal is to have investments that cover all that for me, and while also paying for whatever lifestyle Kara and I decide we want to live. That is a shift in thinking that's going to allow me to make better determinations about what I buy. Anything I buy now has to be an asset. So if I buy a new iPad, I have to be buying it because it's going to increase my revenue potential, and it will. I have I have an iPad Pro now. I can stay with this iPad Pro for as long as I need, because I'm mostly just using it for writing. I've got the Mac Mini I can set up. I can carry with us in the van. I can set up as long as I've got a screen and internet. I can use it. So I'm going to do that. But I also have several assets I can sell, like all those old laptops and old computers and old iPads that might give me enough credit along with trade-in on this iPad. Plus I don't know if you can see it behind me on that drafting table back there, but there's actually an iPad mini that I use pretty frequently. But what do I need multiple iPads for? And I can get pretty decent trade-in on those and just get a more modern iPad that replaces laptop and iPads, etc. So I downsize the amount of things I own, but I am also at that point, I've created a more revenue potential is what I was looking for. So what does all this mean? Does it all sound random to you? I'm sorry about that. These are all the things I'm thinking about right now, and I really think that this kind of thinking is going to be useful for authors and others. If you are in the creative field at all, I think this kind of thinking is going to benefit you. Some of you are much more savvy at this. I know that JD Barker listens to the show. Hi, JD. He and his wife are way ahead of us on this stuff. And I'm actually learning from him. He's made some suggestions and given me some advice, and I am following it. I may have to follow some of it a little slower than I'd like, but I am following it. And that folds into this too. So the final piece here is find good counsel. Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. A funny story with me and JD is like the first time I met him was at a conference in 2020. And I saw him give his talk and it just hit me. I was with Drafted Digital. I was trying to kind of change my approach to things, upgrade a little. I had really taken this whole 5 people thing to heart. And so when I met him, I said, look, there's this Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the time with. And, I'm trying to upgrade my 5, and I'd love it if you and I became friends. And, you know the story, right? We did not become friends, not right away. It wasn't until years later that they needed another co-host for the podcast. I'm not even sure they actually needed me. I think one of the other co-hosts just sort of invited me on. I think JD was too nice to say, forget it, we've got too many people already. But before you knew it, I was a regular part of that show, and JD and I are friends. We've co-authored something together. We've done some other work together, and he's been a huge help to me. So, never give up on your dreams, kids. But more than that, you should be examining who you're spending time with, because you're going to emulate the people that you spend time with. And so I want to surround myself with writers and successful people so that I can be a successful writer. I think you should look to do the same. And the good news is you can do that in part with things like podcasts and attending conferences and things. Listening to podcasts and audiobooks from people who are successful. Actually, I would argue that listening to podcasts is actually higher on the ladder than listening to the non-fiction self-help style books on these topics, because what I've noticed is I've read them all, okay? And some of them have been profound, but 99% of the really truly useful information that you can get from a self-help book is available for free out there in a much more concise form that will benefit you better and quicker than reading or listening to the full book. And I'm not advocating that you stop reading and listening to these books. I'm just saying you can be a little more curated about it. I would say, rather than self-help, skip self-help. Go on the internet and use the internet to find self-help quotes to inspire you, because that's what they're good for. But rather than spend your time reading or listening to those books, go and find books that challenge you and make you uncomfortable and intimidate you and teach you something about something you need in your life. You know, I'm watching and reading and studying more things about, you know, accounting and investing and minimalism and, you know, all these things as a you know, an avenue to improve my life. If you are willing to endure discomfort, then you can accomplish a really comfortable lifestyle. I know this to be true, and yet I slacked off on doing this for a long time. But, you know, I've had ups and downs in my career and success, and a lot of the ups came when I was thinking more like this than you know, reading a bunch of self-help books. Nothing against the self-help books, nothing against the sort of new age spiritualist movement that's out there. I think there's a place for all that information, but I think you don't need to throw your money and time at a self-help book. You can get all that information for free on YouTube. I think your time is much better spent making yourself uncomfortable and studying something you didn't know before and trying new things and taking risks. So there you go. So this one's been, I don't think all over the place. I had kind of a through line, to this whole thing. If you are looking for some guidance on this kind of stuff, you know, feel free to reach out to me. We can learn and grow together. I mean, I don't have every answer, but what I'm doing is surrounding myself with people who do. And the more I do that, and the more attention I pay to those lessons, the less stress I seem to have, and the happier I seem to be, and the more success I see. So let's do that. We'll be that for each other. You know, maybe we won't be good friends, best friends, but, you know, you never know. But I will always be here to offer you any wisdom that I happen to come across, and I'll do that on this podcast. But if you want to email me questions or leave questions for me in the comments of, say, the YouTube video or on Substack, feel free, and I will be happy to answer and help you out any way that I can, if I can. Other than that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. If you get a chance, pop on over to YouTube and subscribe. YouTube.com/Wordslinger podcast. And, you know, follow me there. You can also follow my private personal channel where I'm doing more content at youtube.com/Kevin Tumlinson. Go to kevintumlinson.substack.com and subscribe to me on Substack, and you'll find links to all these things there. And you can also go to kevintumlinson.com, which is my website. I am considering taking that domain and pointing it to Substack. The deeper I look into Substack, the more I think that is the solution to 99% of the things that I need to do. And I'm learning that you can customize it a little more than I thought. So if I can figure all that, I'll share what I can with you. But if you're interested in topics like this, by the way, let me know. If you're interested in sort of the minimalist thing or sort of performance hacking kind of thing, or, you know, if I am utilizing technology or software, let me know, because I kind of want to find a direction for Wordslinger that's a little different than the past. I know I've traditionally talked to a lot of indie authors in this space, but I feel like there's more to us than that, and so there's ways to grow here that we may not yet have explored. So reach out, tell me what you are encountering out there, and we'll see if we can find answers for it, and I'll turn those into podcast episodes. So like, share, subscribe, follow, all the things. Make sure you tell everybody about the Wordslinger podcast and my work. And take care of yourselves out there. God bless you, and I'll see you on the road.
Wordslinger.